All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to get to the bottom of a really big idea, the foundation of truth itself. And we're going to explore this fascinating concept that every single time you or I claim something is true, we're actually taking on a kind of hidden debt.
I mean, really think about that for a second. When you say something is true, what's actually backing that up? Is it just, your opinion? Or is it because a bunch of people agree? Well, the source material we're digging into today says that every single truth claim comes with this invisible commitment, a promise that it's actually backed by something solid.
And that commitment, well, that's what they call epistemic debt. It's this core idea that any claim to truth owes us a justification. It's got to be paid back with actual reasons, with evidence, something more than just a gut feeling or what you'd prefer to be true. So that leads to the big question, right? How in the world do we pay this debt?
So, throughout history, people have tried to figure this out, to settle this debt in a handful of common ways. We're about to walk through what the source for this explainer calls the four classic and, spoiler alert, ultimately failed escape routes that people have tried in their search for that solid ground of truth. Okay, first up, we have what's called the infinite regress. Now, on the surface, this one seems pretty logical. It's the idea that you can just keep giving reasons, one after another, forever and ever. But you have to ask yourself, does an endless chain of justifications ever really prove anything? Let's take a look. So here's how it works, right? It's simple. You say, A is true because of B. Then someone naturally asks, okay, but why is B true? And you say, well, because of C. And then C needs D, and so on. The chain just keeps on going, and every single link depends completely on the next one in line. And that is the huge problem here. A chain of reasons that never ever hits a final solid anchor point, it doesn't actually justify anything at all. It's just kicking the can down the road, forever. It's basically a decision to never actually answer the question. All right, so an infinite line of reasons doesn't work. What if, instead of a line, we made it a circle? Well, that brings us to our second escape route, what's called circular justification. This is where the reasons just loop back and support each other.
And it looks so neat and tidy, doesn't it? A is true because of B, and B is true because of A. The whole system is perfectly consistent. But that's exactly the trap. It's a completely closed loop. It has zero connection to anything outside of itself.
And that, right there, is the fatal flaw. Just because two ideas hold each other up doesn't mean either one of them is actually true. All it proves is that they depend on each other. Like the source puts it, it's basically a structure that's just floating on nothing. It is absolutely not a foundation.
Okay, let's move on to the third route. And this is one that, honestly, most of us use all the time, probably without even thinking about it. It's called the pragmatic stop. It's where we just stop asking why and say, look, it just works. But that immediately raises another question, doesn't it? What do we even mean by it works? Does it work for, say, survival? Okay, well then truth is just biology. Does it work to keep society running smoothly? Well then truth is just sociology. The problem is, the meaning of works is never really pinned down. So, what this really is a dodge. Pragmatism doesn't answer the fundamental question of why something is true. It very cleverly swaps it out for a totally different question. Is it useful? It completely sidesteps the whole problem of that epistemic debt we talked about, and, like the source says, it just kind of hopes you won't notice. And that brings us to our final and maybe the most philosophical of the escape routes, classical foundationalism. This is the big idea that the chain of whys has to stop somewhere, that there are some beliefs that are just so basic they don't need any proof at all. These are what philosophers call properly basic beliefs, and the most famous example, of course, is Descartes' I think, therefore I am. The idea is that the very act of thinking proves your own existence. And look, this feels like a really solid place to stop, right? But the source we're looking at argues there's a very subtle mistake happening here. See, what's really stopping the chain of questions for Descartes isn't the thought. It's the existence of the person doing the thinking. Foundationalism gets so close to the real answer. It points right at existence, at being itself, but it makes a crucial mistake. It calls it just another belief. It stays stuck in the world of ideas, when the real answer is out here, in reality. So, there you have it. 4 different paths, and every single one of them leads to a dead end. So, why? Well, according to the source material, it's because they all share one single, fundamental mistake in how they're looking at the problem.
And this really sums it all up. All four of these strategies are making the exact same mistake. They're trying to solve a problem of reality using only the tools of knowledge. The source calls this trying to pay an ontological debt, that's a debt to reality itself, with epistemic currency, which is basically the currency of ideas. It's like trying to pay your rent with thoughts. It just doesn't work. And you can see here, each and every one fails to give us that solid ground for truth we're looking for. So this brings us to what the source argues is the real problem. It's not just about what we know. It's about that one little word, ought. Why ought we believe what's true? I mean, where does that feeling, that sense of intellectual duty, even come from?
And the source makes a really crucial distinction here. On the one hand, you've got practical bindingness. These are the rules we follow every day, right? You stop at a red light because the law says you have to. But you can always ask another why. Why should we obey that law? On the other hand, you have ultimate bindingness, and that is the final stop. It's the foundation. Its authority isn't borrowed from anything else. It's where the question why finally runs out of road.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter. Just because a rule or a belief works for a society doesn't mean it's actually grounded in truth. I mean, think about it. A society can function perfectly well on a set of shared lies. Functioning is just about keeping the machine running. Grounding is about what that machine is actually built on in the first place. So after going down all these different paths and finding every single one of them blocked, we're left at a final, pretty dramatic spot. The source calls this the epistemic cliff. There are no more escape routes. All that's left is a choice. And here it is. This is the core conclusion we've been building up to this whole time. That deep feeling we have, that we ought to believe what is true, is completely meaningless if that ought isn't grounded in something real. Without that ultimate foundation, the intellectual obligation we all feel, it's just an illusion. So we're left with this really stark choice. Either our sense of intellectual duty, that feeling that we should line up our beliefs with reality, either it actually points to something real, something foundational, or it's just a noise we make, a habit that we've mistaken for authority, a sound that has absolutely no meaning behind it. And that is the edge of the cliff. This entire line of reasoning leads to one place. Our search for truth can't just end with another idea or another justification. It has to be anchored in reality itself, in being. Otherwise, all our talk about truth is basically meaningless. So the final question, the one we're left with, standing here at the edge, is this. If truth really needs a foundation in being, then what does that mean for absolutely everything we think we know?